Hello, people. Welcome to Illo Talk. I am Cory Kerr, and this is 100 Days of Animation, day 96. Only a couple more days left. I literally have no idea what I'm going to do to celebrate day 100, but I should probably do something. I just watched Scott Strickland, and he did like this whole massive recap thing that must have taken him forever to put together. It was pretty cool. Anyway, today I want to talk about how there's no longer like a right way to accomplish something. There's no longer a single path that you take. For example, when you're in an industry and you've risen to some level of success, people can't do the same thing as you because you've burned that bridge. And I'm going to make an analogy to video games. I say video games because when my kid was 3, she would always go, video games! So today we're going to talk about video games and the analogy of carving out your own path and finding your own way to success. But first, intro music. It literally seems like in every game that I've ever played, there has been a level or a stage or a part of a level or something where you're running, you're like, and you're going and you're going and going, and like the floor is like crumbling beneath you as you run. I feel like this is like a common thing. You'd be very surprised at how hard it is to actually locate footage of that. So what you just saw was Super Metroid. Fantastic game. Love that game. Super awesome. Anyway, but I feel like Mario does it, Crash Bandicoot. I actually asked some people on Facebook and Twitter, and they've got a big list, Contra or whatever. I can't find it anywhere. So you get just Super Metroid. I actually had planned on having like a montage of a bunch of them like over and over and over again. But I actually have to do stuff tonight. So imagine in your mind, you're playing a side scroller and you're running and you're running and you're running and the floor is like literally falling underneath you. I don't know if, or those levels where you're running and you're jumping and every time you jump on the next thing, it starts to fall and you jump to the next one and it starts to fall and you jump to the next one and it falls, right? Basically destroying the path that got you to where you are for anyone that's coming behind you. There is an author that most people have not heard of nowadays, H. Rider Haggard. And H. Rider Haggard is amazing. He invented the Lost World genre, where it's you go and then all of a sudden you find this place that nobody knew existed. Anyway, I read a bunch of his books years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. But he does Alan Quatermain, which you might recognize from A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was a terrible movie and pretty decent comic by Alan Moore. Anyway, Alan Quatermain is this super awesome dude. He's strong, really small, fast. He was like a sharpshooter, kind of think like Quigley Down Under style. And even though he was like an English gentleman, and this was written hundreds of years ago, he actually preferred the company of blacks in Africa to the aristocracy of white Britain. And so lots of cool stuff about him. But Indiana Jones is basically based on Alan Quatermain, stuff like that. I'm going way too much into this. Anyway, there is a book that he wrote called She. And she has become this archetype of female characters. In The Lord of the Rings, I'm going to blank on her name. I'm not like a Lord of the Rings nerd, though I love the books and the movies, but I'm not like one of those guys that knows all the history of the Silmarillion or however you say that. But the chick that's glowing white and super beautiful in the woods, that's the elf or whatever, Galadriel? I feel like people on the internet are going to argue with me. You know the one I'm talking about. She glows. She's super powerful. Anyway, she is an is an archetype of this character that H. Rider Haggard made up, right? And there's lots of people like that. Basically, all powerful female rulers that are like magic and powerful beyond belief, right? Anyway, she like lives in this. They call her the White Queen because she's this. They've heard tale. These explorers have heard tell of this White Queen ruling in some African country, and they go deep into somewhere. I can't remember exactly. And they traverse all this stuff. And at one point in time in the story, well, they find her and she's like ruling, and everybody's terrified of her, and she's like godlike. And anyway, and there's this place that she goes to become immortal, and as she's taking these two characters to this place, they're actually like hopping from like stone to stone. These big tall. It describes these big tall pillars, and as they're jumping on them, they're like falling, and for a number of reasons, there would be no way to get back there, right? And so nobody could follow them as they went to this kind of waterfall of youth. It's not so much a fountain. Anyway, that imagery. Imagine that imagery. And I wonder if H. Rider Haggard is the reason that became like a trope in video games and movies. Like, you know, as you're running and things are falling and no one can follow you, that type of thing. Because if you look at a lot of Nintendo and subsequent video games that have come after, systems that have come after that, they did base them a lot on like lore and mythology, and those guys were very well read and whatnot. Anyway, like the Goomba creatures are based on mythical creatures that had like water in their heads, and they had a bowl and stuff. Anyway, lots of cool stuff like that. But I always wondered, is H. Rider Haggard the basis for that like falling ground, crumbling bridge trope that you see all the time? All of this is to say that every comic book writer and illustrator of any note that I've ever heard answer the question, how do I break in? They never say, well, I don't want to say never, because there's the talent scout for Marvel that gave some really decent advice, which I'll go into it some other time. But most of the time they say, here's how I broke in, but that doesn't work anymore. Like, here's how I reached where I am and became, you know, known and whatever, and was hired to do what I do. But that path, you can't take it anymore. That path is closed. The way is closed. And so I always imagine as they're saying that, you know, they see this opening, you know, maybe there's a new technology, or there's a new gimmick, or there's a new, you know, something, or they do something in a specific way. And it's just an opening. And it's just enough for one person to go. And then that path crumbles as they cross it, so that, you know, you can't have thousands of other people follow them and break in and become successful because they've done the same thing as so-and-so or whatever, right? And most creatives have a story like that. Well, this is how I got here, but that doesn't work anymore. You know, like that, the ground is crumbled behind me as I took that path. That's not true of all industries, right? If you want to become a doctor, the way is clear. Like, there's one way to do it. Like, there's variations on that way, but like, you get a bachelor's degree, and then you go to medical school for a certain amount of time, and then you do your residency, and then, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then you are a doctor, right? You have become a doctor, and you go into research, or you open a private practice, or you work in a hospital or something, right? And I'm sorry for all the doctors out there if I oversimplified the path to your career. It's hard, but I don't understand it. But it seems to me like there's a step-by-step process, a difficult step-by-step process that everybody can take, right? That's not true of creative careers as well. It's not like I can say, I'm going to work at DreamWorks, and then here is the DreamWorks bar that I have to study for and pass. And then once I pass the DreamWorks bar, I am a DreamWorks animator or texture artist or character illustrator or something. Like, there's not a clear way to do that. You have to kind of carve your own path. And so as a creative, as someone who creates things for a living or wants to create things for a living, There's not a clear way of doing that. There's lots of people out there that give really good advice, and this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of uncomfortable giving advice. Parenthetically, you guys are probably thinking, you're uncomfortable giving advice? You never shut up and you give advice all the time. Anyway, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, that worked for me, but it might not work for the next person or whatever. I mean, who knows what stars aligned to make that happen, what confluence of events came together to build the scenario in which that worked. And so, like trying to do what other people have done. Take Kevin Cross, for example. Like the guy has a significant number of followers on YouTube and other channels. And he started the 100 Days of Making Comics. And now there are a ton of people doing 100 Days of Making Comics, which is awesome. That's really cool. But him doing that rose him to a certain level of success. And he's still climbing, he's still fighting, and he's still drawing and still doing stuff. But it's not like I could go, well, I'm going to do that, and it worked for Kevin, so it's going to work for me, right? The results are going to be different. The path is going to be different. The things that I create are going to be different. My audience is going to be different. The people that end up reading, consuming, buying, supporting my stuff are going to be a whole different mix because I'm a different person, and creativity is very personal. Excuse me. I wasn't crying there. I just had a little burp in my throat. But it's a very personal process, and what you produce is very personal. And if at any point in time you're producing something that is trying to ape someone else or is trying to mimic the way that something else is going on or whatever, you lose some of that. Now, that isn't to say that you can't learn lessons from those that have come before, right? I can look at the path that somebody's run in front of me and I can say, one of the things that they did well was they ran really fast, and had they slowed down, the ground might have crumbled underneath them, and they would have fallen, and that would have been bad, right? So I can kind of look at that situation, and I can try to figure out, tips and tricks. But I've still got to tread my own path. I've still got to blaze my own trail. I've still got to figure out what it is that I want out of life, what I want out of creativity, what I want out of whatever it is that I'm doing, and that's going to be different than everybody else's. And then I need to take what I've seen everybody else do and make it mine, and make it something that is personal and something that works for me, right? So the whole point of this little rant, diatribe, I don't know what to call these, because I'm not angry, so don't feel like I'm ranting. Thought process? Thread? I don't know. The whole purpose of this is to say that, that you should look up to people, but you shouldn't mimic them. And, it's interesting to read books on highly successful people, but it's not like you're going to be the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or, Wozniak or whoever. You can't just I'm going to be the next, I'm trying to think of people now. I'm going to be the next Frank Miller. Frank Miller was Frank Miller. No one else will ever be Frank Miller, right? Rick Remender is Rick Remender. No one else will ever be Rick Remender. Sean Gordon Murphy is a really interesting story. He literally showed up to California, slept in a dumpster to go to a Comic-Con and launch his career. It wasn't a dirty dumpster. He found a place where they washed dumpsters, and it was a freshly washed dumpster. But he still slept in a dumpster that night, and that's pretty hardcore. But it's not like I'm going to go sleep in a dumpster. That's not what made him who he is and has given him the ability to command the type of page rates that he can. That's because the guy draws like a freaking monster, and he's a beast, and he nose to the grindstone, puts out books after books after books, and he's very strategic about what he does. And so I'm not going to say I'm going to take a Mecca trip and follow Sean and sleep in the same dumpster that he slept in and talk to the same people that he talked to, because that way is closed. That ground has crumbled behind him. But I can look at it and I can say, some of the qualities and attributes and things that he's done are applicable, right? And I can look at those that have come before me and been successful, and those that have gone before me and failed, and I can cherry pick lessons from those situations that I feel are applicable, and then it's everybody's best guess. You might fall, But like in video games, you probably have some extra lives, and so you can dust yourself off and you can try again, and maybe do it in a different way, or do it in a way that, like that worked up until this point, and then something happened and it kind of broke down. So I'm going to try something a little bit different, or I'm going to do that faster, or I'm going to jump at that point, or I'm going to zig where I zagged, or whatever, that type of thing. And so, anyway, it's just interesting. It's just interesting because I get that question from a lot of students who ask me, how do I do this? How do I become this? How do I get a job doing this or whatever? And I kind of tell them, and none of them like this answer, I don't know. And it's not that I haven't done that. A lot of the things that they ask me, I haven't done them. And I tell them straight up, well, I don't know. I haven't done that, right? But the things that I've done, it's not like I can tell you, yeah, well, here's exactly what you do to become an art director. Here's exactly what you do to become a graphic designer. Here's what you do to get a job at a big New York agency, or here's how you work for this person, or here's how you launch a successful Kickstarter, or here's how you start to make a living making stickers and enamel pins or whatever. Like, the problem with that is that anything that I say that is specific won't work anymore because it's been done, right? And so along those lines, what I want to, and what I do tell people, which I do find useful, is you need to make the things that you want to do, right? And so nobody is going to go out and trust you on your word that you are a good artist or musician or writer or whatever. You're a writer when you write. You're an artist when you create. You are a musician when you play. And doing those things is the proof in the pudding. I always thought that was a weird phrase, but I think, and I could be totally wrong, the proof is in the pudding means that the recipe doesn't mean anything unless the pudding tastes good. So the results of that recipe, I make pudding and then I eat that pudding, and if the pudding is good, then thus that was a good way to do that thing, right? Pretty sure it's British, so it's not just talking about like pudding. It's talking about a lot of other things. But anyway, the proof is in the pudding, meaning like the results of your actions are where the proof that you can do something is. And so a lot of people will say, well, I'm of a certain caliber and I demand a certain thing, and if I don't get that, then I'm going to be upset or whatever, or I turn down things that, don't respect who I am as a creator. It's whatever. It's like, and the same people have never made anything. It's like, just because you've taken some classes doesn't mean you can do it. Like, prove it. Go out and make stuff. Do something. Create things. Leave a crumbling path in your wake that is evidence of you moving forward. Whether that be a series of T-shirts, or whether that be a whole store full of prints, or whether that be 100 days or 30 days of this or 100 days of that, or you're going to do your own series of short stories, or you're going to design a logo every week for 52 weeks, or you're going to write, a poem every day, or you're going to do a poster every day. Whatever the thing is that you're going to do, the proof is in the progress. The proof is not in the talk, right? We call those people in Texas, where I've been one time for 5 days, so I claim that I can use this phrase authentically, is all hat and no cattle. Meaning they put on the show of being somebody who's able to do something, but they don't have a herd, right? And so they've got a big giant hat, but they don't have any cows, right? But the point of it is, don't be a puffer fish. Don't try to make yourself bigger than you are. Puff yourself up full of air. Make amazing claims that you can do things in the hopes that people will believe you and hire you to do those things. What you need to do is do those things for yourself. And then they will look at that and they will go, I like what you've done for yourself, and I want you to do those things for me, right? Or if you don't want to work for other people, that's cool too. You can say, I'm going to do these things for myself. And if you guys want to buy them, you should buy them, and people will like that. Because, if you like it, then there might be a couple other people that like it too. Anyway, there's my crumbling bridge floor video game side-scrolling analogy to life. So to sum up, because I feel like I've been super rambly, To sum up, basically, you can't take the same path. You can't become the next Bill Gates by doing everything that Bill Gates did, because the world has changed and the floor has crumbled behind him as he's tread that path. He's changed the world. The level is different now because of who he became and what he did. But that doesn't mean that learning those lessons is completely useless. It just means that that path is going to be different for you. And so cherry pick lessons and qualities and analogies and things that other people have done that have been successful, and apply them to you and change them and alter them and mutate them so that they fit your path, which will be different than everybody else's path, literally everyone else's path on this planet, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about, that even though we all share a lot of similarities, every experience that we have and the perception of the world that we have is completely individual. Is it Rashomon? Akira Kurosawa's movie, I think it's Rashomon, where 6 different people see the same thing, and then each one of them tells the story slightly differently. Like, when we perceive something and when we do something and when we experience something, we bring to the table all of our bias and all of our past experiences and everything that we have done and plan to do, and our viewpoints on life and the way that we see the world, and we view everything through those lenses. And so everything for every individual on this planet is different, at least a little bit, which is why I don't like market research in marketing, is because we try to group people and claim that they all think and act, in specific ways. Millennials do this, and Gen Xers do this, and baby boomers think and feel this way. And it's all a bunch of crap, because we're all individuals. Now, there are some similarities and trends and things, but that doesn't mean that we can be lumped together. And it definitely doesn't mean that we can take the same path. So, in any case, moving forward and moving upward is good. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. So there's a 22-minute rambling analogy about side-scrolling video games of my youth in the days of yore and yesteryear. In any case, I've only got a couple days left, and I'm moving forward on the animatic so that I can do the animation, and I'm pretty excited about it. And you guys can follow along at corykerr.com, and if you like this video, like it. And if you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed yet, you should consider doing that, because it's fun and people will like you. And when people like you, life is good, right? And they will just know instinctively, you subscribe to Cory Kerr's channel, and that just, makes me want to be around you and be like you, right? I'm sure that'll happen. I'm sure that's happened to many, many people. I'm sure it does. Every time. Guaranteed that your social status and your financial ability will increase by subscribing to this channel. None of that is true. But you should subscribe anyway, because I don't feel like I should say that at the end of every video. And that's all I've got. So, yes. Yesterday was good. I'm glad I got to the end of a scene. It felt good to accomplish something. Close that circle. It's good stuff. So, feeling good. Kind of on a high. In any case, we'll catch you guys later. And you can catch my stuff at corykerr.com, as I said. And all my social media links are in the bio. I keep saying bio because I think that's what you do on Instagram, is link in the bio. I read that all the time on Instagram because you can't put links in the description of the individual posts. But the links are not in the bio of this, though I think they are on my channel. And they're definitely in the description of this video. And so if you like Instagram, go check out Instagram. If you like YouTube, follow me on YouTube. If you like Twitter, follow me on Twitter, and whatnot. I think if you like Google+, you probably won't get along with me very well. So there's that. Yep. Good times. Good times. I'm out.